Welcome back to the show. I am so excited for our guest today. This is Vivica Menendez. I know I probably just said your last name wrong. So you pronounced your last name for me.
Menegaz.
Okay. Well, I always,
It was close. It was close.
it was close. So here's the deal, you guys. Everybody that's listening, they know about my health struggle that I went through. And you might remember this from I interviewed Vivica several years back for our Keto Virtual Summit when we did it. And I told her at that point, it was in 2016 that I was following intermittent fasting. I did it as all the guys. You and I both know exactly the guys I was following. Did it really strict, basically didn't eat for a handful of months, did the one meal a day. And I lost my health. I tanked my adrenals. I lost chunks of hair. My hormones stopped. Like, not my hormones didn't stop, but I didn't have a period for months. And I just started searching online at that point saying women and intermittent fasting because all the guys kept telling me I was just doing it wrong. And Vivica was one of those bloggers that was out there saying, hey, ladies, we aren't the same as men. And so it was so great when we connected later because we both have the same philosophy. Obviously, we're both women. We understand women's hormones really well. So now what I love is Vivica's also really doing a lot with carnivore. So how did you jump into that? Because I know, at least for me, when I first saw people doing carnivore, my gut sense was like, this isn't right. Like, you've got to have fruits and vegetables. It's going to be too acidic to be carnivore. I went through all of that stuff. And then I saw brilliant people doing carnivore. And I was like, they know something that I don't. And as soon as I started researching it, I was like, this is brilliant. And I jumped, deep dive headfirst in, and I felt amazing. So how did you get into the whole carnivore experiment or way of life, I guess I should say now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Lisa, because when I first got in contact with carnivore, I was like just kind of scratching my head, like, this is counterintuitive because we were taught, fiber and veggies and get your nutrients from vegetables and so that part was there for me that made me question. But then there was the other part because I come from a Western press background. And so I read the actual tome that he wrote, not Nourishing Traditions, which is the interpretation, Sally Fallon's interpretation of his work. But if you actually read his work, that's where the gold is. And it talks about nutrient dense diets and indigenous, traditional diets. And the diets of these indigenous people that were really, really healthy, they were based on meat or, meat equivalents. Like if they were a fishing village, it was seafood, of course. If it was in the plains, they were, eating beef. If there was the Eskimos, they were eating seals. But it was a lot of meat in there. And then the other thing I learned from traditional diets was that vegetables and grains had to be highly processed in order to be eaten. So you can't just take wheat and just stick it in your mouth and chew it. Good luck doing that.
Right.
And why? Because we're not cows. We're humans. So cows could eat some grains, even though it's not ideal for them either. But, we're not squirrels. We're not just supposed to live on nuts and seeds. So that was something that it's all little light bulbs moments where you realize, this is a guy that studied, it was his life's work. He spent years traveling the world and studying these tribes and doing all this scientific research that was really amazing and undervalued, and then after there was all the paleo experiment, and looking at starting to look with paleo and Marxism, we started to look at ancestral diets.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of ancestral anything. It's so just interesting for me, right? Evolution and where do we come from? How do we evolved? What was the most time that human beings spent in a state of health and homeostasis? And in order to find that state, I believe we need to go back before agriculture, because after agriculture has not happened anymore.
Right.
So combining, all these different pieces of information and overcoming I think it's an agricultural bias, then we really start seeing how being carnivore makes sense in an evolutionary perspective. Because if you think about all of the people that evolved in the northern hemisphere, so we migrated from Africa, where there might have been like verdant forests and luscious like prairies and tons of animals, we migrated north and more north for whatever reason. But we ended up through the evolution process, we ended up in places where in winter nothing was growing,
Right.
and preserving was not the thing. No mason jars, no
Mm-mm.
dehydrator back then.
No refrigerators. We had our freeze, like
No.
subarctic temperatures.
Well, actually, there was a natural freezer because it
Yeah.
was probably cold enough to preserve
Yeah.
things with the cold. But like, you know, there was like the only thing that really could be successfully preserved was animal-based nutrition.
Mhm.
What's the word? Animal foods,
Yeah.
animal-based food.
Proteins. Yeah.
Yeah, and and then also remember that whatever is plant matter that we consider now take for granted, all the nice veggies and all the beautiful fruits, it didn't exist.
Hmm.
Those are all man-made in a way because we have genetically engineered through breeding and like agriculture the way that we eat our plant foods today. Like if you look at wild species, if you ever have eaten anything wild, very different.
Yes.
The fruit is small and sour, it's not sweet at all. And they're hard and tart and like, ugh.
Right.
And the roots are tiny, wild carrots are like the size of your little finger and they're skinny and long and there is barely any sweetness to them.
Yeah.
So the plant matter was very different back then, and that's what we have evolved with. And not just that, if we look now, I'm talking about this book all the time now. There's a book called Sapiens,
Mhm.
and it's a book about history of humankind. And I haven't even finished it yet, and I'm just raving about it. It's a great book. It was a New York Times bestseller. But it really goes into the details of evolution and what we ate as well, which is really
That's
beautiful.
awesome. Well,
Mhm.
and that's what I had interviewed Craig Emmerich too, right? And he, with his engineering brain, he's like, here's the science of it. And this is how our colon, like, we are meant for protein. Like, that is just the best way that our colon are is. And so, I love that perspective of it too. And I think my biggest thing is when I realized, and it was my aha, right? Because I was that girl that was always staying away from gluten and all of these different things because of how I would feel after I ate them, right? And so it was that fact of realizing that all of the plant products secrete some sort of toxin to protect themselves from being eaten, right? Versus like an animal can run away if they're under attack, like animals or plants can't. And so those are the things that are irritants to us. And so when you eliminate that out of the diet, I mean, I love it for just figuring out food sensitivities on people. I love it just to remove inflammation out of the body, but it was also just such a like aha moment for me. And even when I initially jumped in a couple years ago, I think I went like 2 or 3 weeks, like strictly originally, right? And it was funny because it looked like I had dropped a ton of weight, but my scale didn't budge. And it was just because you could tell that I was different body composition at that point as well. So those were just some of the things that I realized. And then also the most bioavailability of nutrients are found in the flesh of an animal. Like, so really when we're sitting here thinking, well, we have to get vitamin C from an orange, well, there's so many other nutrients that we can actually get from like the animal proteins, right?
Yeah, I agree. And for me, like at this point, so you asked me, I got into carnivore. I
Yeah.
actually got into carnivore through a patient
Okay.
and was one of my rare long-term patients that, I usually have people for my 4-month course. This one signed a year-long agreement, like because she was really, really struggling
Yeah.
and a young woman too. So we started working together and we went like she was from vegan to vegetarian. So I picked her up, I think, at vegetarian at the end of vegetarian. We got into keto paleo, got her keto adapted and started playing with that. But there were some issues that were really not, we could not break through. And one of those was constipation.
Mm.
Her gut was just not working. And she was so desperate. Like we literally tried everything. And this is me like maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah.
seems like an eternity now, but only
This
4 years ago.
2020 makes it feels like it was a decade.
Yeah, that's right. So like one day she comes to me and she's like, I'm going to try to do the carnivore diet. And she's in Europe. So she told me about Paleomedicina, the clinic in Hungary. Um, and I had knew nothing about it, and she got exposed to that information. So she started researching. I did, and she's like, "I'm going carnivore," and I was like, "No, you can't do this. I know nothing about it. Oh my God, you're in my care. What am I gonna do?" So of course, I jumped in like with her, and so she did she did amazing, and within like a month, all her issues were kind of disappearing and dropping off. And she actually went to work with Paleomedicina and Dr. Clemens. And, I got to interview Dr. Clemens like 3 years ago. It was amazing. I learned so much. But also, what I learned is that after 3 years of carnivore myself, I couldn't adapt. So, like, there was a threshold where, like, okay, your gut is going to switch and you're going to be adapted to eating carnivore. And what I realized is that, yes, I love eating meat. I can eat meat all day. It was no problem. I was feeling good, but my intestines were not happy.
Okay.
Meaning,
What do you mean by not happy? Because it's
I
interesting.
became constipated. Like I
Oh, you're
couldn't
kidding me. Okay. Because
bowel
mine
movement
was,
at all,
I
which,
didn't have any problems with it, but I got friends that were doing it and they're like, the diarrhea was uncontrollable. And I'm like,
right? So
really? And I was like, no, I was regular. I was fine. So it's interesting. Okay. This is good. I want to hear this.
yeah, because this is what carnivore is all about. Like, all those things you talked about a reset diet and figuring out the food sensitivities and all of that is really on point. But why do we need carnivore, and who is carnivore for? For me, it's the question is related to your microbiome. It's all about your gut. And as science progresses more and more, we are like illuminated about the importance of our guts and like how incredibly important the microbiome is, all the different functions, the gut brain, how we absorb nutrients, and like what do we need to make our gut function. So for me, I just have this kind of, it's a bit of a personal theory, but it came about a few years ago, and now it's getting really explored. And like I was like, oh, I was right. It's like happy to be right. But it's about like so again, back to hunter-gatherers. We had a variety of foods, and at some points we were just strictly carnivores, but we still were able to scavenge, and pick and eat whatever was edible at that time. So I feel like humans are really adapted for being omnivorous and, really thriving on a great variety of different foods. And what makes us thrive the most is this variety, because it gives us all kinds of different nutrients in all kinds of different ways. And that's also, explained in the book Sapiens about how Homo sapiens and like before agriculture, we were taller, smarter, healthier, and the skulls prove it, the skeletal, remains, they prove it. So there is back to the microbiome and being carnivore. So theoretically, if you have a healthy microbiome, you do need to be carnivore. What you do need to do is eliminate all the toxic stuff. And plants, in my opinion, and this is in like healing traditions of, since the history of human beings, plants are medicinal. Plants are medicine.
Yeah.
Plants are also poison, and don't we always say that dose makes the poison? So that's plants. But in meat, you can't kill yourself eating meat.
No, right? Yeah.
You can kill yourself eating too much spinach. At some point you'll be so oxalate toxic that you'll drop dead. But with meat, good luck with that. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So we started to understand the different functions of this incredible variety of tools that we have for survival, for nourishment, and how we evolved alongside these tools with kind of a greater intelligence, than ours. But humans just evolved and like changed and morphed. So back to the gut variety, ideally, and eliminating the toxic stuff. So eating plants in moderation, eating a variety, not fixating on just one thing, not the kale smoothie, kale spinach smoothie every morning, or the tons, just like concentrating plant matter. Like in a smoothie, you're not chewing it and it's like just giant bags of kale. Oh, look at this, all in one smoothie. That
Mm.
is toxic. But
And like how I just was somewhere where they said kale, even the organic kale is still full of pesticides. It's
yeah,
crazy.
oh, yeah, that's cross
Yeah.
contamination. Yeah, there is nothing almost clean at
Yeah.
this
No.
point.
Mhm.
I know. So when then do we need carnivore if we thrive on variety? Is the post Monsanto world where glyphosates happen, and that's a big one for me because they are an antibiotic, and what they do is they kill your microbiome to the point of permanent damage almost. And I
Mm.
believe that the body will bounce back from almost anything, but after glyphosate world and GMO world, people have extremely damaged intestines.
Mhm.
And what happens then is that you can't process and absorb most foods anymore.
Right.
So we need to revert back to the number one most non-toxic, easily absorbed, contrary to what everybody thinks. Oh, meat is hard to digest. Well, if you're nutrient deficient, it is. And we do need to support your digestion when you switch to carnivore, right? Because you are nutrient deficient, right? And hydrochloric acid and zinc and all those
Mhm.
good things.
Yeah. So
But
let's, keep going.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, with the
Well,
microbiome, because now
to
we
say
know so
if
much
you
of the
got to
microbiome, can
Mhm.
affect obesity and all sorts of stuff if their microbiome is off. So, and I find so many people just take down massive amounts of probiotics, and it's not necessarily the way to get them. Right.
Right, I know.
So how do you tell people? Because I had interviewed Zach Bush, and that was one of the things where he said, "Here's the research. We know people that are on antibiotics if they followed, however, I think it was 6 weeks. They said the people after the 6 week time period, the one that had their microbiome back like the best were the ones that just ate food and nourished their microbiome that way versus those even taking probiotics. So, I mean, it is, you see, everybody's taking them, but we really need to look at how we're getting
Yeah,
it from food.
probiotics are definitely not the just key solution to healing the gut. I feel like they could be a useful crutch
Yeah.
for certain moments to like what they do, in my opinion, is like they support the environment of your endogenous flora, and
Mhm.
like they just create a more friendly environment when your own strains and your own flora can like build itself back. It's kind of like having the cleaning lady coming and clean the house so that you can be comfortable in the house and there is not like trash everywhere.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the cleaning lady goes home. And the same thing for probiotics. They leave the gut at the end of the day. They don't colonize.
Mm-mm.
They just give a little boost, a little help in processing things while your own gut is trying to heal.
Yes.
And and that said, like there are people like that for healing, all they need is really like meat, straight meat. And in my opinion, so this is where there are different views in the carnivore world. I think that some people think that they will just be on carnivore for the rest of their lives and that's all they need and they never need to eat meat again. And I think that is a possibility. We're all different as
Yeah.
humans, right? And
Yeah.
nothing is exactly the same for two people. So if somebody is really super convinced that they'll do great on carnivore for the rest of their lives, do it.
Mm.
Okay, no problem. But for a lot of people, I see them, they grow out of it. And I've
Mhm.
had several patients that have been carnivore for about a year, 8 months, 9 months. And then at some point it stops working. Like for some people it cured constipation and then like they're back in constipation,
Mhm.
and then there are other things that need to be addressed. And I think that perimenopause in women, that has a lot to do with it.
Thank you. That was what exactly I was going to go into that, talking about menopause and perimenopause. So, but, Yeah, like keep going because I do want to pick your brain on this one.
Yeah. Um, See, I think there is a factor. Like I talked to my ex-patient who's now a super expert in carnivore, and she's like, "Oh, they're just not doing it right. They're not doing it right. They're not eating enough fat. They're not doing this. They're not doing that." And like I'm pretty good at experimenting with my clients. I'm not a scientist. And like when somebody is scientifically minded, they want to base all the results on research. That's great. I think science is beautiful, research is beautiful for the people who works for it. I am more an empirical, like hands-on, clinical practice. I do my research basically on my real patients in real situations. And like there are people that, I took a few women through this perimenopause to menopause transition doing carnivore because of their gut being really damaged. And then that's what I saw over and over, that when they hit that transition, that threshold where your hormones are switching, everything goes haywire. And then like, you know, yeah, we've experienced that. And like I've experienced that on my own body, that literally there is a moment where like everything goes haywire. And then we have to look at the complexity of the human being. Of course, when you're a 30-year-old woman, you have a certain hormonal experience of life. When you're 50, it will be pretty different.
Yes.
And the hormones are so powerful, and you know that, right, Lisa?
Yeah.
They change your view of life and your brain, the way you think, look at things, everything.
Yeah. So let's go into that because you and I are both not just carnivore, but we're not the keto, the dairy keto. We're literally both paleo keto. We were both doing paleo keto before it was ever a term.
Right.
Um, so here's a couple things. Let's talk this. For those of us that have been low carb for decades, I literally have friends that are like perimenopausal, 10 years older than me. And they're like, Lisa, it's just crazy. You need to have carbs. And I was like, no, there are no essential carbohydrates, right? Like that's where I go to. So these women literally have a friend right now who's dropped 20 pounds by increasing her carbohydrates to an astronomical, like you and I would look at that and be like, holy crap. Like I look at it like there's actually, you probably know, I don't want to drop names, but there's an app out there
Mhm.
that and I program everything in, it will tell me to do 200 grams of carbs in a day when I work out. Like I don't even know how I would eat 200 grams of carbs. So, first off, two questions. First one, do you think your body, if you're not eating carbs on a routine basis, that you forget how to burn them? Like you become so fat adapted that you just don't even know how to use that for fuel. So when you eat carbs, this is what one of my friends is like, I think you forget how to use them and then you gain a bunch of weight. And I was like, well, the inflammation that you would gain, right? Like this is my thought. I was like, I don't know. I think your body is pretty intelligent and would know how to do that. And then second, do you really feel like as you go into menopause that women need carbohydrates? Like this is what my friends are throwing at me. And I'm like, I just don't think you guys are. I mean, every person is individual, right? Absolutely. Like even the guys, I got guys that biohack. Like I love some of like, I love being a chiropractor because these people are always biohacking. Like one of the guys is like, here's the deal, Lisa, I thrive on keto. Like my body is lean when I'm in ketosis. Like it is so great. But to be honest, like I just don't feel my best that way. Where they just say, and they're like, so I do a little bit of carbs, a little bit like 50 grams of carbs. And we all figure out what works best for us. So it's an individualized approach. But what are your thoughts on that stuff with like, once you become so fat adapted, you can't deal with any carbohydrates. Okay. Thank you for rolling your eyes because that's my same thought.
We're human beings. Remember this whole conversation we're just having about
Yeah.
where we ancestral diets, and like humans are like a step above scavengers. It's
Mhm.
like us, the pigs, the rats, and the cockroaches.
Yeah.
But that's how we
Yeah.
survived, because we can really adapt to eating a variety of diets and do it relatively okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look at India. Like they've been vegetarians for a long time and they still produce incredibly intelligent geniuses, people, very successful. They might have different body shapes, but they're maintaining their brains, and like, it works. Somehow
Yeah.
it works. So I feel like with humans, it's really tricky because it's not like a cat. A cat is very on a set track. Cat is a carnivore and you can never give it spinach or it will die. it needs to eat raw meat, period.
Mhm.
With us, it's not the same. It's not that clear. And that's why things get so tricky. And like, but in my opinion, is when we start making these hard rules, black and white,
Right.
it's like this, it's a train track. There is no straying. Then eventually you might get in trouble. I don't think the body will ever forget how to burn sugar, because even when you're zero carb, you still burn sugar. You make your own sugar. Your brain, it will never be completely ketone based. If
Mhm.
25% of brain energy, it will still always come from glucose. That's why there is gluconeogenesis, so
Genesis,
you
yeah.
can produce your own glucose, right?
Right.
So how can you forget to burn glucose? That's
So
ridiculous.
true.
That's
So
just
true.
somebody who doesn't know physiology.
Yeah. And it's like just those conversations. It's just funny because they know that I'm so keto, right? And
Mhm.
then it was just this little group text that we were all going back and forth in. And she's like, well, I don't, I'm like, well, whatever. Each of us, we're individuals. We each, it's going to, what works for you doesn't mean that it's going to work for me. Like that's the reality of it. And then also it's the stress. Like there is so much, we don't know how life's going to throw at us. Like if anybody knew at the beginning of 2020 in January or February, that all of a sudden come March, we were going to be locked down for God knows who know, like how long, now that we're 2021 and it's like still happening, like I know for me, my cortisol levels, I'm a small business, I'm a brick and mortar, right? Like my cortisol is out of control. So things happen. Like we were just laughing before we even hit record. I'm like, yeah, my weight shifted this year. It's not what I wanted. I'm still working out, but there are certain things with physiology with cortisol. Like I'm trying to get that sucker under control.
Right, and we're back to hormones, right? It's
Yes.
like hormones rule our lives, especially women. Like totally, I've been saying this for years, and
Yeah.
that's another proof. Look at that. And like hormones also rule mindset. Again, there are so many pieces of the puzzle, but honestly, this fact that as we go into perimenopause, like towards the end of perimenopause, we're about to jump into full menopause, no more periods for like at least 6 months. You're like really transitioning now. I found out for myself as well that I could reincorporate carbs. And when I did, I actually lost more weight.
Isn't that
And
crazy?
I
Yeah.
was really fit, and this is like 2019, 2018, 2017. So, during those 4 or 5 years, it was like the end of my perimenopause, and like I started eating carbs again, healthy carbs, not that much. I didn't need like 200 grams a day, but I was eating maybe 50 grams a day, 40
Mhm.
grams a day, maybe 100 grams a day some days. And they were all healthy carbs, and it really helped transition, especially. I think that I don't know not a biochemist, not a doctor. So I'm more of an intuitive, practitioner. But what I see with like the correlations with the patients is more tied to the thyroid health and of course the adrenal health.
Yeah. I mean, and those are
And
all together.
somehow those good carbs seem to feed those pathways.
Yeah.
Even though when I went and did all the research and dug into research as much as I possibly could, pulled up all the studies, they say that the thyroid to convert T4 to T3, we only need like micrograms of carbs. And so you should be able to have those no problem. But then why does my thyroid do better? And like now, so I'm like about almost 2 years into menopause, and like I'm eating more carbs. I am meat based, but
Yeah.
I'm also eating more carbs, and I do eat fruit sometimes. Like I eat papaya because I really like it and it helps my gut.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll eat some berries.
Yeah.
um I like to eat greens.
Mhm.
I try to eat non-cruciferous greens, so I'll have romaine lettuce almost every day, and I make it in 20 million different ways. I like to have some mushrooms sometimes. Like, I really like squashes, so I love acorn squash. This is how I get my carbs.
Yeah.
I try to avoid eating the same thing all the time. And this is thanks to the carnivore experiment, too, where before I might have eaten sweet potatoes every day for my carbs. And then I was like, oh, darn, like phytotoxins. No, okay. And to
I
like,
know.
like
I know.
oxalates.
I
And
used to do a bunch of spinach. I'm like, oh darn it, oxalates. Like,
So
Sometimes we know too much.
yeah, right? And but it's kinda like a minefield a little bit, but this is what we evolved to navigate, like, as we harvested and hunted and we moved from one place to the other, we were perfectly in tune with what nature was giving us.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just a giant field of spinach.
Yeah.
There was maybe a little plant here and a little plant there, and then if it was that plant in a big field, it was only for like a week and then it was
Yeah.
gone, you
Yeah.
know?
And that's what I love you
So
saying like this because it's funny. One of my friends had texted me yesterday. She's like, "What do you think of intuitive eating?" I'm like, "Well, I think it's kind of like what I talk about. Like I teach my women, especially when they're in ketosis and they're still cycling, like you've got to pay attention intuitively, like when you're craving those carbs. Cause I always kick people out of ketosis. Like that's literally just, I want them to do that. I don't want their body to adapt. And I'm like, we all know, like, whether we're craving more carbs during our cycle or some women, it's during ovulation, it's just like intuitive that way. And she was like, well, no, I'm seeing the intuitive eating of, I didn't realize this was a thing that people were talking about intuitive eating. Like, oh, if I feel like eating a Twinkie today, I was like, oh my God, that's not right. I was like,
no.
that's just an excuse to eat shit. Like, that's what that is.
Yes.
So I'm like intuitive eating, like really, like how were our ancestors? Like, is it okay? And I'm playing now recently, like I'm still cycling, right? So like from day 1 to 14, I'm doing the let's lift heavy. Like this is estrogen. I want to build muscle now. Like, and hey, my body could adapt to a little bit more carbs. Let's do it that way. And then
Mhm.
14 to 30 or 28, whenever my period starts, like I'm like, all right, we'll do a little bit lower, like just more, maybe just gentle cardio type stuff. So I really just love the biohacking that way to see how best to fine tune. But yeah, when you talk about intuitive, that's what I think of intuitive eating. So it was just
I
this funny
come
conversation with one of my chiropractic friends. And she's like, I have a patient telling me she wanted to like whatever. And so she went and ate. And I was like, no, hey, I want to eat crap. Like that's stupid, but people will justify things, right?
totally. Yeah. And I think there are two kinds of
Mhm.
intuitive eating, an educated and a non-educated.
Uneducated, yes.
Or like, intuitive eating should be an evolution,
Mhm.
not where you just start. Because if you just start and you don't know anything, then you're going to go to the supermarket and you're like, my intuition tells me to eat a pint of ice cream like
And
every
and
morning,
Fruit
first
Loops.
thing in the morning, and Fruit Loops on top of it, and a bunch of like maple syrup and chocolate syrup, and I'll be like glowing.
Yeah. So what you do with things a little bit different. And this is what I was just thinking of too. This is the same chiropractor. This is so funny. I should have told you this even prior to the show, but since we're recording, it's fine. So, you know how your friends are always just like, oh, you don't really know much, right? At least my friends do that. Lisa, whatever. It's just Lisa. So I had a chiropractor reach out to me a couple of years ago. A good friend of mine. I hadn't talked to her in a while. And she's like, I got to tell you this. I'm like, what? She goes, this patient walks in and she's like, oh my gosh, I was listening to this doctor about intermittent fasting and keto, and it was just so great. Like, you have to listen to this podcast. And she's going through and literally she pulls up your podcast. And it was the podcast of you interviewing me. And all of a sudden, this is one of my besties who was just like, Lisa, you don't know what you're talking about. She was like, oh my God, like this was you. She sent me your podcast with this Vivica lady. And I'm like, oh, so the girl that didn't know anything, now your patients are listening to and learning from, huh? So I just thought it was really funny. So, hey,
But I
she was
know.
like, listen, this woman had this horrible experience because she was following intermittent fasting with how the guys did it. And I really think she's right on. Like these two ladies knew what they were talking about. Like, it was like,
That's so
yeah,
cute.
actually, remember when I wasn't talking to anybody because I was going through my health crisis? Like, that's what it was. So
Yeah. Well, this is how we learn, right? And
it
like,
is.
I don't like the term healer because I think that we all heal ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way that we heal is healing ourselves. But as a healing role model, this is the only way that we learn is through our own experiences. So we have to fail in order to like learn and then teach other people or
It is.
embody.
And then we understand exactly where they're coming from, right? Like that's the thing. It's like I have been there. I have I didn't talk about it even on your show. I just said how much hair I lost. And I'm now talking about it as in I was sitting in my hairstylist chair when she's like, Lisa, I need to show you something. And I laughed at her and I was like, what, do I have bald spots back there? And she just looked at me and she spun me around and I had bald spots on my head. Like I always said, like, yeah, I lost a ton of, it's all grown back though. Right. But
Mhm.
yeah, like I understand how horrible that is. I understand what it's like to wear your hair in a ponytail for a year because you're scared to death what happens if it falls down. Right. Like, so, but there is light at the end of the tunnel and going through and healing through that because again, like I said, all the guys, oh, Lisa, you're not doing it right. No.
Yeah, I know.
You need to fast more.
Yes, I wish there was. I think that it's been a really good collective learning
Yeah.
experience. So, like for all of us to do keto
Mhm.
paleo, for me, it's been an evolution, and carnivore has been kind of like the last phase of that evolution. And now, for me personally, I'm at the point where I eat a meat-based diet.
Mhm.
I like to define it like that, or I call my diet like a healing diet,
Yeah.
depending on the days. Some days I'm not so good and like having all the healing foods.
Yeah.
And then it's just like a coping diet.
This is my stress out diet. But even like when I eat bad, quote unquote, eating bad, it's not bad. Right. Like in
Exactly.
comparison. And like you had just said, like if we're doing carbohydrates, it's like 50 grams of carbohydrates from a sweet potato. Like it's, or I mean, this weekend I was visiting a friend. And so she was like, how about smoothies? She didn't eat like me. Right. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess we can do this. I mean, it was the first smoothie I've had in a year, but like, that's my bad eating. Come on. That was a
Exactly.
grain drink.
Totally. I had the same experience. I visited a friend and he made me a smoothie and we went on a hike. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go on a hike, I can actually have a smoothie. It'll
Right.
be all right. I'll survive.
Exactly. I mean, we went we're walking for like a mile and a half, or not a mile, an hour and a half. And I was like, this is fine. I've got, they threw the
Right.
berries in there and like whatever else. And then they threw kale. I was like, she's like, let's take out the spinach. I'm like, oh, that's great. And then I was like, I'm not going to get so picky to be like, can you take that kale out too? Like,
No, that if somebody wants to stick kale and spinach in my smoothie, I won't drink it. Sorry. I
yeah,
mean, I will drink avocado and berries and
oh,
maybe
that
some
sounds so,
cacao, but I'm not gonna drink spinach.
yeah.
Sorry. Spinach is kind of off my list of things. I think it's a troubled veggie.
I know with all the oxalates, I did a whole class and I felt like I felt like I was going to say sad, but I don't feel sad. All these women that were wanting to help improve their diet. And then I was like, and then we have this. And I was like, oh my God, I just totally overwhelmed them. I'm like, okay, let's just look at, so it's all in, it was a couple of years ago. I mean, I was eating spinach like 2 to 3 times a day and then I kind of dug up on the oxalates. So,
Mhm.
okay. What other information you got? Like share with them where they can find you and all your books and all that good stuff too.
Yeah, the new book. Are we doing video? I can show you the book.
Oh, you can show the video because at some point we'll put this up on YouTube, but in the meanwhile, we will always have the audio
I
going.
wish I had that handy. But
Woo.
so this is the latest book.
Yeah.
It's the Carnivore Diet Cookbook.
Cookbook. So let's talk about the cookbook. I love this, but literally, like, it was funny because I had a couple of friends, and I'm sure by the time this comes out, all you can share it. The podcast is kind of in a hiatus right now because the old name of the podcast turns out was trademarked. So I'm in that process of pulling it all. But I had some friends that were like, "Has anybody heard about carnivore?" I said, "I have this great interview with Craig Emmerich. I can't share that. Like here's the
Mhm.
deal, whatever." And they're like, "Well, what do I eat?" I'm like, "You eat meat." Right. Well,
It's
how do
not
you
as
cook it?
easy as
Like
you
freaking
think,
cook
though.
it however you want. It's like it's not that complicated, folks. Like, right? Like I eat steak 5 days a week. You're like,
Yeah.
so what's in the cookbook? Just fill me in on that. I haven't ever seen a carnivore cookbook.
So this cookbook actually has something that I think is largely missing in the carnivore space, which is three different styles of doing the carnivore diet. And we don't talk about that a lot, but this is about, again, the healing and who needs carnivore for what, and
Mhm.
carnivore as a healing diet. So for me, there are three different ways of doing carnivore, and we call it this like the purest, like really strict meat and water and salt, and that's it.
That's
You
the
know,
Jordan Peterson, right? Is that who it was on Rogan's show?
And
Yeah.
then also like Sean Baker is kind of like that, although he eats shrimp once in a while, but it's just mostly meat and water and salt.
Seltzer water or water.
And so, and in the book, I really explain all the detailed reason, who is it for and why. And then there are the ancestral. So in the ancestral, for me, it was the one where we reintroduced some sugar and like sugar, like honey and a little bit of fruit. Like, and this is like reintroducing carbs. And it would be an example of people that could use that diet is like athletes that are training and they need to do some carb loading, specific kinds of performance where you need a lot of glycogen in your muscles. It's really hard to do with strict carnivore. So carnivore plus, you know, the little bit of strategic ancestral carbs, you know. And Paul Saladino, I was watching a video, he has this beautiful video just came out about honey, and he's Mr. Scientist research guy, and he did a lot of research around why honey is actually not as bad as you think. It's not just pure fructose shot in your vein, you know. So there is research now coming, not just your intuition and, you know, intuitive knowledge, that honey is not so bad. It's especially it's like pure raw local honey, you know, organic, non-toxic, all that stuff. And then the third way is the nutrient dense. And that one for me is, you know, really focusing on like things like organ meats, eating nose to tail. And of course, my book is nose to tail because I am, you know, very kind of firm nose to tail eater, not wasting anything of the animal.
Right.
And the nutrient dense is more for like fertility, you know, and like women who are breastfeeding and they still want to stay like mostly carnivore, and people who are preparing to have a baby, or, you know, people who are in recovering from illnesses. So just really boosting the nutrients and how to do it and how to cook those organs and how to integrate them into your diet.
What would you say for somebody that's like transitioning into carnivore? They're still working out, but you know, they want to lose weight. Are they fine doing the very strict like meat and water, or should they be incorporating? Do you think they've got enough fat stores and stuff that they could get away with doing their workouts without the honey or the fruits or without the berries?
It depends like where they're coming from. So if they come from being keto adapted, I think they can switch to strict carnivore, meat and water, the purest. Otherwise, they probably need some steps, because it's like slamming your body from like fifth gear into reverse,
right?
You know, at 60 miles per hour, like crunch.
Exactly. Going through the keto flu and all that horribleness.
Yeah. And just like you need time to adapt. And because carnivore is a very low carb diet, the most benefit for you, the easiest way to dip in is to be keto adapted already.
Absolutely.
And having like all those adaptations, they're real physical adaptations. They help you burn fat. And then like you can just go slide right into carnivore without basically having any problems.
Yeah. I love it. What about while they are working out though? What if they have been carnivore? And I mean, this is it. I'm following certain people that are super athletes, but they are super just strict carnivore, zero carb. So like zero carb.
Right.
I mean, but they're still adapting that way. Like you wouldn't necessarily say they absolutely need to go and get some honey or whatever for the glycogen stores.
Not necessarily. So my co-author, Erin, you know, she's like, I did this book with a co-author, and she's
Erin Blevins.
Yeah.
I went to Hawaii with her with Prove It way back in the day.
Really?
Yeah. What? I just realized now that I saw that and you say Erin, I was like, oh my gosh, I saw this on Facebook from both of your guys' post. I didn't realize.
Amazing. And like, you should totally have her on the show next. Like, to dig into that sports performance, because she's a CrossFit competitor, and she's just amazing. And like, I'm more like, you know, the nutrition, and like I have a certain focus with women and like hormones. Well, she's like a lot younger than me, and she competes, and her body is incredible. And, you know, she can explain really well her experience with like training. And in the book, she does in the introduction speak about different applications of carnivore and training and different kinds of training and performance.
I never even thought of that. Yeah, we did. It was way back when Prove It was first, like the beginning company. And so like her and I don't remember who it was, they were all doing CrossFit workouts for us on the beach and all sorts of stuff. It was back in my CrossFit days, which have long gone. After several
Oh,
low back injuries and knee stuff, I'm like, I called it quits. I'm like,
mhm,
I need my body and my practice to work. So I can't continue to deal with injuries from
right.
CrossFit.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. So where can they find the book?
So the book is on Amazon. And by
Okay.
the way, this is just a quick shout out to the
Oh,
other
yes.
book. This is the second edition of the
Okay.
Keto Paleo Kitchen, came out with a different name. So if you want to adapt to carnivore from, being a conventional diet, this is a good in-between step.
Okay.
Because
Name both of the books since this is audio.
okay, so one is the Essential Carnivore Diet Cookbook by Vivica Menegaz and Erin Blevins. And then the other one is Keto Cooking for Healing and Weight Loss. And that's just mine. So,
Sweet.
um,
Awesome.
second
Where can
edition.
they find you on social, your website, all that good stuff?
So I'm been known for my blog and website, thenourishcaveman.com. And I am in on everything. I'm on Facebook, The Nourish Caveman, and I have a Facebook group, and I have Instagram. There are a couple of really exciting things happening in the works right now. So
Yeah.
by the time the podcast comes out, who knows where I'm going to be? But I'm rebranding a little bit,
Love
and
it.
so I'm expanding from just being keto and doing that, so into like a larger practice, working a lot more with mindset
Oh,
and
I love it.
trauma patterns, and like guiding people through a deeper journey, and including like wisdom coaching. I hate the term life coaching, so I haven't come up with what I really want to call it, but it's a whole life experience.
Oh, so awesome.
And so my new website is called journey2wholeness.love,
Oh,
and is journey number two wholeness.love. And that's going to be where the Nourish Caveman is still going to be a part of that. And then I'm going to start working mainly on Facebook, in a Facebook group, a private group, and Clubhouse is coming up.
we need to connect on Clubhouse then.
I
Yeah,
wanted to
let's host
talk
a
to you
room.
after the podcast, but
Yeah, let's
guys,
totally like
you guys
it's
find us together at Clubhouse.
yes. Oh my God, I got so much going. It's just been they like again, my audience knows who I am. It's been one hell of a year. Right. And it's been
I
one hell
know.
of a 4 months. Like I'm at that point where I'm like, okay, God, I understand it. I know I must have strong shoulders, but I'm at my tipping point. Right.
I just
So
moved. I
yeah.
also like in the process of everything, and like after 2020, I separated from my partner, and he told me I had to leave, so I had to find a place in a hurry. And
There's so much.
the last
But
3 months have been crazy.
I know. And so that's where I told one of my friends that just had something really like blindside her yesterday. Right. And the same thing. And I was like, here's the reality. And we all know this, the universe conspires for us, not against us. So there's been a lot of life lessons. Like I lost a friend in December and as a patient, I was talking to him yesterday about it. And I said, but he didn't die of COVID. He's like, no, he died with COVID. And I was like, thank you for saying that. I'm like, he died with COVID. And there's all this other stuff that was about it, but it's just like, it's the fact of the universe is always working for us. God is always working for us. And at the end, God wins. Like truth
Yes.
prevails, God wins. So
Yeah.
I hear you, sister. We're both
I know.
going through some stuff. And hopefully we'll get this podcast out at some point with a new branded name.
It will happen. Don't worry. It's
It
just
will.
a process like everything else.
I get it. All right. So great to have you here today, Vivica. So great to reconnect.
I love talking with you. Thank you for having me
Yes,
back.
absolutely.